So just we're on stream, we're talking about this real quick, and this is from Luna Strawberry. She really likes,
or they, I don't know if you know she or she what.
They really like Jiaoqiu as a character, but I understand that unfortunately he is too niche. I don't have Acheron and dot teams, so he's useless. I hate such niche characters. Why can't Toyo just make some good supports without this terrible restriction to their kit? And then Jackie kind of answered this pretty well, because then people would complain their teams / archetypes don't have a dedicated support that does the job well, only a master of none support that can be easily replaced, thus having no value. There's no winning once you start being picky about the meta. I actually think what's funny about this is if I use Genshin Impact has the what is it? There's a word that we use, but basically they call them mistakes. You have the original 4-star characters in Genshin Impact, Xianling, I don't remember how to pronounce his name, but Water Boy with the swords, and then Bennett and Sucrose. All of the original 4-star characters are overtuned. Yeah, the national team, right? And Fischl, right? Xing Shou, thank you. So you have the original 4 stars from Genshin Impact that are considered like your universal supports, if you will. And even if they weren't, they probably weren't meant to be universal. They might have meant to make those characters work with anything in specific. But the fact that they work, and they work on almost every single team, is a problem. It's not a problem for the player. The player loves this, right? Because now you get to pick Xing Shou and Xianling, and then you pick a DPS character that's your 5-star limited DPS or whatever, right? Like Milani, and then you pick Nahida or whatever, and then you're done. Your team's built. Pack it up, you're done. Hey, I want a new DPS character. Pull a new DPS character. You keep Xing Shou, you keep Xianling, you keep Nahida, new DPS character, you're done. So I obviously understand that a lot of the free-to-play audience love that. I'm 100% a Mulani main. That's the first character that I really want. But she's a big reason why I even retouch Genshin. But point being about all of this is that it's great for the player. It's 1, bad for the business, and 2, bad for the meta. So Genshin isn't so much a meta-driven game because you can kind of do whatever you want. But some of the other games are meta-driven. Zenless is becoming meta-driven. I can see it now. It's not there yet. It's the beginning of the game, but once we start to get a little bit more developed, you're going to start seeing meta-driven stuff happening in Zenless. Star Rail is definitely a meta-driven game at this point. Not so much that you need meta, but you do need a meta team. And what I mean by that is you could have Acheron, you could have the Firefly break team, you could have a Boot Hill break team, you could have Dot. I'm losing a little faith in Dot, but maybe it'll get better with some new characters coming down the road. And then you have the follow-up attackers. So your Topaz, your Robin, your Dr. Ratio, and then Fei Xiao, whoever's coming out, right? You need to be able to build one of these meta teams that's really strong so that you don't have any issues moving forward in the game. Nothing stops you. When you have characters that are super universal, as Luna says, just a good support without this terrible restriction to their kit. When you do that, you have what we had in the original, what was it? 1.0 to like 2.2 or something like that, or 2.1 for Honkai Star Rail, which was the realm of Hypercarry. Now, I'm known as somebody that doesn't like Hypercarry, which isn't entirely true. I think I just don't like how rampant Hypercarry was. But point being is that Hypercarry means that you don't, it's like the Xianling and Xing Shou thing, right? You don't need anything. You can literally just take these same characters. At that time, it was Pela, it was Bronya, and, you know, Ting Yun or something like that, yeah? Slap them on the team, replace the one DPS character, and now your team is complete. So that every single time a new DPS came out, all you had to do was pull a new DPS. That's why so many people horizontally invest, is because they can build this one team that works and then they're good. Now we get into a point where that's not the case, and you're starting to see more niche or meta-driven, like team archetype-driven teams. You need a character, this character works specifically for this. You can use them in other things, but they're really good at this. Robin is a great example. That is an overtuned Harmony character. Robin works really freaking good in follow-up attack teams. That's what she's designed for. But her kit is so strong that she practically works as the best Harmony unit for any other team in the game outside of the break stuff, right? And even then, you could probably get away with using her for some of the break teams, give or take whatever you're trying to do. Otherwise, Ruan Mei would come into play there. So now with Robin, most players that have a multitude of Harmony units are using Robin. They're not using Bronya. They're not using Sparkle. They're using Robin. And Robin is doing everything that Bronya or Sparkle would do, but better. Sparkle is the hypercarry unit that everyone talks about alongside Bronya. They're both in the same position. So the specialized hypercarry unit is being outshined by the character that's not supposed to be the hypercarry specialized unit, right? You have Firefly. Firefly is designed for break teams. Ron May enhances the crap out of that, which helps a lot. Using any other Harmony character for Firefly, so your general good support, let's take Asta, who is a generally good support. Asta's not niche. You can fit Asta into a lot of things, or even Ting Yun. You can fit them both into a lot of different things. These characters don't work for Firefly. You can use Asta with Firefly as an alternative because that's maybe all you have, but it's not going to take Firefly to the next level to be able to help Firefly do whatever the hell it is that she's trying to do that May would allow her to do. The reason this is good for sales, well, obviously, because they're going to sell you a character paired with another character and then paired with 2 more characters to complete the team, right? That's kind of how turn-based stuff works, or just how gacha games work in general. They want to sell you one thing and then, oh, you need this piece to complete that one thing and you need another thing to complete that one thing. Sure. So they're not going to make anything that's super universal. And this is why a lot of the community says like the original 4 stars in Genshin were a mistake, because you don't have to pull for all the other support characters in the game in Genshin if you just have these other characters. The national team just works. It works on everything. There's no reason for you to pull outside of getting a DPS character. What's happening in Star Rail is they are purposely designing these characters, and we can see that with, if you keep up with like the different changes they make throughout the game, we can see what they're doing in the game, or rather between patches or changes, whatever the versions. And they're going like, oh, this character is really strong and super universal. Okay, we're going to nerf that, and then we're going to make them super unique and specific to this 1 or 2 things that we want that character to be focused on. And then that's just kind of what happens, right? They may work on some of the other things or more universal things, but that's not what they were designed to do. So they perform a little bit lackluster, if you will. When we're looking at it from the good supports and just no restrictions, it doesn't do good for the game, like meta wise, healthy wise, because then you have to gear. And this is the way that I'm thinking about it from an enemy design standpoint. You now have to build your enemies around the universalness. That's not a word, but the universal, whatever. You have to build enemies around the universal concept that your universal supports are good. That's bad. That's literally bad game design. When you have something where the whole purpose of it is to be stronger, better, learn more about the game, like be able to beat the game, it's not good if all of your supports are universal. Bad for sales, bad for the game, bad for the meta, bad for the enemy design. Yes, and exactly, to Sean, because they don't nerf. In a different game, I use Pokemon all the time. They nerf things in between patches, or not patches, but DLC, or in between the games. League of Legends, they nerf and buff or change things every patch. When you can adjust the meta, you can have universal supports. You can have all that crazy stuff in the game, right? But when you can't do that, or you don't do that, like I think Epic 7 is a really good example of this. Epic 7 actually had buffs and nerfs per patch, where they would change characters and then nerf characters, change characters and then nerf characters. And so it kept the meta fresh. So original 5-star characters or S-rank characters, whatever they're called back then, they were still very strong. And in some patches, they were really weak. Cool. It is what it is, right? It would encourage or incentivize you to pull and then not pull. My Hero, I forget the name of that game. I used to play it, but it was a gacha game that came out for My Hero, and it was literally had PvP. You could like play against an opponent and everything. They would nerf and buff in between patches. Hey, Deku's too strong. His finger shot, it one-shots people in PvP. Okay, well, we're gonna change it. Now you only get 1 finger shot instead of 2 finger shots, and it does 70% less damage. Hey, this is too weak. Okay, next patch. Now it does 30% more damage than it did before, but you still only get 1 finger shot. And that's what they did. Hoyoverse doesn't do that. When a character comes out, unless it's absolutely just broken, and I mean literally broken, it just fucks up the game, they don't do it. Nuvalette in Genshin, great example of that, where they literally tried to nerf him, And the entire community, nah, fuck that. We paid for Nouvellette. You can't do this. Hell no, bro. If you do this, we're suing. That's where it's going to go. If Acheron comes out and then they're like, yo, we think Acheron is too strong, we're going to nerf her. Fuck no. We paid for Acheron. We paid E6, S5 Acheron. You can't nerf her. This is bullshit. And then they're going to go from that. So the way that they work around that is by designing characters that fit the time period of whatever's going on in the game. And then they fit with other teams that may or may not be meta, or at least strong in the meta. So yeah, and Zhongli is the only one that I can remember that actually got a buff. Zhongli came out, the community was like, yo, he's not good at all. And to be fair, I think the only reason that happened with Zhongli is because Genshin Impact was their first, like, you know, we about to get out of the mud with this one. So them fucking that up back then would have been really bad. But that is the only buff that I know of that is happening here, right? I can't think of anything else. Daya, yeah, we begged for Daya to get buffed and they were like, nah, fuck that. So it never happened. But making a universal support is not a good thing. It's really not a good, like, it's good, again, for the player, the free-to-play player, it's great, right? Because you don't have to do anything besides get this one support, and then you can build whatever characters you want for your DPS or your team and everything like that. It's boring, but it works out for you. Doing it this way allows them to keep the meta fresh, or attempt to keep it fresh, without actually losing out on any potential sales or any potential players who have already pulled and they've already built a team. And it allows you to pick and choose what gets on your team or what doesn't get on your team. A lot of the problems that I notice with Honkai Star Rail players, for instance, is that they want too much, if that makes sense. They want everything. Maybe not everything, but, you know, I say this before when Acheron came out. Hey, I really want Acheron, but I don't want to play Nihility. I don't want to build my Pela. I don't want to use Black Swan. I didn't pull Black Swan. Ty Doggo. I don't want to have I don't want to pick up Silver, right? Like, I hate Silver Wolf, things like that. But they want Acheron. So what was the problem at that time was that people wanted Acheron to not have the Nihility requirement in her kit. They were like, take that out. Just let her get any support, any harmony unit can give her that buff. Let her. So then they forced, hey man, we're gonna make Bronya and Acheron work. We're gonna make Sparkle and Acheron work. No Nihility. We're just gonna run her with our standard harmony characters. No Nihility. Fuck her kit. We're gonna do what we want. Because players in Star Rail in particular, throughout that experience at least, wanted this specific thing. They invested into only Hypercarry, into only these 3 supports, right? Or 4 characters that are support. So we want everything to work with these characters so that we don't have to waste any resources or time building anything else. That's the gist and the bottom line of what happened. And it happens a lot. Now, where you're forced to do that, right? Firefly, you were forced to build a whole different team. If you already didn't have Maid, now you got to pull Maid. You had to build Firefly, you had to build Gallagher, and you had to build Harmony MC. Tough tits, right? Like, you're cooked. You had to do it. Acheron, hey man, we're not changing it. So if you don't have E2, you're going to have to build these Nihilities. You know what most people did, including free-to-play? Instead of just building the Nihility characters, they pulled E2. They literally went out of their way to pull Eidolons of a character just so that they didn't have to use the character's kit. That's insane. There are free-to-play players with an E2 S0 Acheron because they didn't want to build Pela, and they didn't want to pull Silver, and they didn't want to get Kafka or Swan or Gwynnifin or anybody else. That's just, they did the same thing with Daniel. Daniel's a little different though, but like still, right? It's not like I love the character so much. Obviously we did that. I did it, or I tried to do it for E2. I stopped at E1. I did it for Topaz. My Topaz is E1 S1, right? There are obviously us players who like we do it because we love the character, but a lot of other players didn't do that. You know, to be fair, a lot of the 90% of the CCs were saying Acheron was dog shit without E2. Sarah, you know what's funny? They were saying that because they didn't want to use her with Nihility. It wasn't a thing where like her damage is ass. You know what I mean? Because me, I believe Doggos, I know Moon did it. And I want to say one other person. We all cracked 1 million damage. Like nothing. We put 2 Nihility characters on the team. We were cracking 1 million damage every showcase. We're popping 800,000 to 1.2 million damage, right? And then, hey man, it was Rihu. Okay, and then Rihu too.
hey, we want to put Sparkle on the team with Robin.
Or Robin was not a TAM.
Sparkle plus we're on May. We want to put Bronya plus Sparkle on the team with Acheron. We want her to build her own stacks. And then we want her to do 1 million damage.
Why? Like, for what? Literally for what? Hey, bro, she needs her light cone. She needs to be E2, otherwise she's bad. There was so much doom posting about Acheron just for us to be here now. All of it, Acheron's the new standard. If you don't have Acheron, bro, it's bad. She doesn't do Acheron levels of damage, bro, this DPS character's bad. She's trash. No reason for that. It is what it is. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of what's going on with a lot of stuff, dude. Be thankful for the niche characters. I know, obviously, free-to-play players don't want that, or like certain players don't want that, but it works out in the long haul because now you can build a full dedicated team. You don't have to share supports, and you can get the maximum damage or damage performance out of whatever team you're looking for. That's pretty much it. Anyway, let me know if you agree or not down below in the comment section. Keep it civil, usual stuff. I feel like I have to say that now because y'all like to get wild. All of a sudden, we're not doing that. But yeah, I can't say my usual outro is inappropriate for YouTube. Great Zalgo actually mentioned this. This is like post-recording. The recording's done. But this was such a great point that I wanted to put it in the video. And I guess Aqua wants to say something in the video too, but more niche characters also help reduce power creep by a significant margin. That's one of the comment that Zalgo left, and I absolutely agree with that. Having niche characters reduce the power creep, or rather having niche characters exist within the meta, keeps it so that there's the speed at which power creep may or may not happen cannot happen, right? You can't power creep 99 different supports or things for a team if they're all niche, or a majority of them are niche and work for X, Y, and Z. That's why even today, it's harder for someone to say like Jiaoqiu completely replaces X character or X unit on these teams, because he doesn't. Even in DOT, I think right now, we're not even looking at Jiaoqiu for DOT. And he has burn, he has the vulnerability, he has extra damage, right? The things like that to attach to him to make Kafka or Swan do a little bit more damage, get a little bit more stacks, things like that. Hey, bro, put Gunaifan on the team, call it a day. There's no point. Get the light cone if you want a little bit of extra buff. Use Robin or Mei instead of Jiaoqiu on the team, call it a day. So it's not happening, and that's why the previous video, I have a video like power creep isn't here yet because of things like this. It doesn't exist. I know that people think power creep is like, oh, this character does 500,000 damage more than the last character, so that's power creep. No, it's not, when the game has clear defined team archetypes that help the meta. You have break, you have follow-up, you have hypercarry, you have DOT. Even some of that is broken down into its own subcategories, right? Hypercarry isn't just hypercarry anymore. I think I mentioned this quite a lot now. Yunli has a form of hypercarry, but it's not actually played like a hypercarry team. It's played like a counterattack team. You just happen to have the hypercarry supports on the team, but she's not being hypercarried to oblivion. Like the same way that I play Yunli on a team, I'm not playing Yunli team the same way that I'm gonna play Jing Liu or Dill Pickle or even Zila for that matter. I'm literally playing Yunli as a Yunli team. So it is what it is. The line can get pushed up that enough that certain niches don't hit it anymore. Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel that way about DOT right now. I think DOT is in the weaker category for the damage happening, but it could just be because we haven't gotten strong DOT characters in a while. I'm still waiting on an AoE bleed or like a blast damage bleed character. That would be fire. So it definitely makes a lot of sense.